What's going on, guys? So in this video, I'm going to be going over the fundamentals of how to find successful setters and also how to lead them, because there's a big problem in the space right now where setters are churning, they're leaving, they're always looking for greener grass. And if you want to be able to keep a setter for longer than 3 to 6 months, then these are the things you have to do, right? And the reason we need to keep setters for that long is because the last thing you want as a business owner is to be in this loop of bringing new people on, training them up, managing them, all for them to leave and then get reset back to zero. And I've seen people stuck in this loop over and over and over again. And because they're investing so much time into hiring, training, managing, they literally get nowhere. Like they can't scale because they never have the infrastructure in place with a consistent setter. So they just can't scale. And that's honestly the worst position you could be in as a coach or an agency owner, when appointment setting is the bottleneck that you need to solve, right? So here's how to overcome that, and here's how to make it so you have a long-term loyal employee who is going to help you scale to where you want to go. And if you do everything in this video, you will have a setter that is more consistent, stays for longer, and wants to grow with your company. So let's quickly just start off with what makes a setter a good fit. So logistically, this setter needs to be based in US or Canada because they need to be, first of all, in a similar time zone. So if you're watching this and you're from the UK, for example, then I would actually hire a UK setter. But for most people watching this, you're probably based in the US. And so I would only hire from US or Canada because they know how to communicate with your market, right? That's the biggest thing. The time zones are also an important factor, but the main thing is going to be how well they can communicate with the market. Next thing is they need to have full-time availability, 6 days a week minimum, with no other offers. So what that means is a lot of people or a lot of setters will be on multiple offers. And the reason that doesn't work is because they will always prioritize one offer over the other, and they will always inevitably leave one offer to pursue the other one if the other one's making them more money. So you will be wasting your time if you hire a setter that is on multiple offers. All right, so you need to find someone who's only on your offer, full-time availability, 6 days a week minimum. I like setters to take off Sundays because you don't want them to go insane. I think it's good that they take a day off, and Sunday usually is the slowest day for setting anyway. So Monday to Saturday would be ideal. And then also, you want to make sure they don't have any other significant commitments. So anything that's taking up more than 10 to 20 hours per week of their time, you want to definitely vet that and figure out if that's actually sustainable for them, right? So they might have school, they might have a part-time job, whatever the case is. You want to make sure that it's actually sustainable and will align with what you're looking for and what you're expecting from them. Moving on to skills and traits. So these are the fundamental skills and traits that I look for. The first one being coachability. Like they need to be coachable. They need to be able to take feedback, take it well, and implement it quickly, right? So they need to be willing to get constructive feedback, digest it very quickly, and implement it immediately. That in itself is a skill. Next is social awareness. So you can actually judge level of social awareness on the interview. Throw them a joke on the interview, see how they respond to that. But you want to make sure that they're a socially aware person and that they have emotional intelligence, because that is a fundamental skill that's going to help them navigate conversations in a better way and not be too pushy, like know when to pull back or when to push more. And they'll also be able to understand prospects' pain and emotions on a higher level, which will allow them to leverage that in the conversation and move the prospect to where they want them to go. So that's why that's a super important skill. Next is obviously you want them to be punctual and highly communicative. If you try communicating with your setter and they're not getting back to you like until a day later, that's a massive red flag. You need to know what your setter is doing at all times. They need to be highly communicative. They need to have their Slack notifications on, right? And they need to show up to meetings on time. Because even if they show up to a meeting, let's say 5 minutes late, Sure, 5 minutes is not the biggest deal in the world, but it's the thought process behind that, which is like they don't prioritize that meeting enough to show up early. So your offer is not a big enough priority for them. And that in itself is a reason to get rid of them and find someone new. Next is have a realistic long-term vision and goal. So a lot of setters will say, maybe not a lot, but a decent amount of setters will say, "Oh, I want to make like 30 grand a month as a setter," right? And I think what they think is like, okay, they have a really high income goal, so that's a good thing because they're going to push hard. But if it's too unrealistic and they don't get anywhere near that, they're actually going to get discouraged more easily. So that's why it's super important that they have a realistic goal for what a setter can make, which is typically in the range of like 3 to 8K per month on most offers. And so make sure that they have a realistic goal that falls within that range or at least close to that range. That way you can actually provide them what their goal is, right? Because if you can't, then they're going to get discouraged easily and they're going to go look for another opportunity. Lastly, they should have at least 2 months of setting experience. But what I personally say all the time is I would rather have someone with zero experience who has the fundamental skills that I need in order to help them become a killer, as opposed to someone who has the experience but doesn't have the fundamental skills. So ideally, they have at least 2 months of setting experience, but it's not a deal breaker if they have less than that, as long as they have the other fundamental skills that will help them be successful. And the only nuance to this is if you aren't actually great at setting yourself, and you're actually looking for someone who's better than you at setting, then in that case, I would look for someone with experience. But the reason I don't have to, or I don't usually need to, is because I'm training them up anyway. So as long as they're coachable and they learn quickly, we can get them ramped up very quickly. So that's the one nuance to this. But I will also say, if you're not amazing at setting yet, you probably aren't ready to hire a setter yourself, because you need to be able to train your setter on the skill as well. Okay, so how do you lead setters so that they actually perform consistently and you don't have to micromanage them for them to do their job? What most of this is just setting the right expectations. So first off, have very clear SOPs for them to follow. So if you have a CRM, make sure that they know how to use that CRM. Make sure they're given all the resources and processes to be successful. Clear KPIs. So they need to have very clear and specific KPIs that they need to hit every day. So that could be a number of outbound, number of call offers, number of booked calls. I even give my setters a specific set rate that I want them to hit for the day. And so make sure that's super clear what they need to hit before they log off that day. Communication. Tell them what you expect of them when it comes to communication. Where are you guys communicating? Is it on Slack? When should you be communicating? How should you be communicating? All that kind of stuff, right? Because you want to be fully aligned with your setter on what that communication looks like, so that there's no guessing and there's no, potential resent because you guys aren't on the same page. KPI tracking. So your setter should be sending daily end-of-day reports with all of their KPIs or inputs for the day. And you got to make sure you hold them accountable to that. And then lastly, have a clear OTE. So the setter should be fully aware of what they can make. And if you don't know what OTE means, it means on target earnings. So what can they earn per month if they hit their KPI, right? So they should know exactly what that looks like. Next up, daily accountability. You should just have a daily meeting with your setter. I would say if you absolutely cannot do a daily meeting, at least 3 per week. And at the absolute minimum, 1 per week, right? But if you want to really dial this in, have a daily meeting. If they ever miss KPI, address that right away on your next daily meeting. Don't allow them to cut any corners when it comes to any of those expectations we just talked about, or else they're going to start to basically realize that, they can cut corners and do whatever they want. So they'll start to create their own rules around things. All right. And moving on to the last part here, setter retention. So this is going to be the main stuff when it comes to retaining your setter for a longer period of time, so that you don't get stuck in that loop that we talked about at the beginning of this video. So the first principle is always be growing. You need to be able to facilitate their growth, because just like us, a setter is always wanting to grow, right? If you hit a series of like 20K months and you're just like stuck at 20K a month, even though that's good money, you're not actually happy. You're not really feeling that great because you're not growing month over month, right? And it's the same thing with a setter. They want to see their income grow month after month. And so if they no longer see a future with your offer, they're going to leave. They want to see that you're constantly trying to improve. So even if the actual outcome is not tangible, as long as they see you constantly putting in the inputs and trying to uh, improve the situation, they are going to feel good about that and they're going to want to stay on the offer because they know that there's a future for them. And secondly, you need to give the business what it needs. So you're responsible for getting better at closing, getting better at marketing, fulfillment, etc., so that the business can grow and your setter can make more money. So when you actually hire a setter, you take on more responsibility and it will actually push you to improve in all these other areas, which is good because it's going to help you make more money too. So it's good to have this mindset that you're responsible for growing your business, that not the setter. And that brings me to my next point, which is hire to delegate, not to scale. And I'll expand on what this means because you're like, what? Why wouldn't I hire to scale, right? Like, of course I'm going to hire to scale. What that means is you will scale indirectly as a result of hiring a setter, but hiring a setter is not going to directly make you scale because that's just one pillar of your business. Although it's a very important one, you still need to put the inputs into place in order for that to work and actually help you scale. So a setter alone is not going to grow your business for you. You are hiring that setter to delegate that task to someone who's good at it and can do it full time so that you can buy back your time and invest your time into higher leverage tasks that are going to multiply your efforts, which is posting more content, running ads, spending more on ads, like putting more inputs into the machine so that the setter can book you more calls, right? So it's your duty to solve bottlenecks as they pop up. If your setter is hitting KPI and they're performing, you should be increasing inputs and ad spend so that they can continue to grow and you guys can continue to make more money because you never want to be the bottleneck in your own business. So if the setter's not the bottleneck, make sure that you're not the bottleneck. And like I just mentioned, invest your time into higher leverage tasks once you hire a setter. What that typically looks like, usually when I bring on a client, this is what it looks like, right? Appointment setting is the bottleneck. So they might not have time to do appointment setting. They don't want to do it. They're not booking enough calls, whatever the case is. They realize that this is the bottleneck. So they go and hire and train a setter, or they hire me to do it. And right after hiring and training the setter, as you train them up, usually takes us about 5 days to 7 days to get them to KPI. Once they start hitting KPI consistently, the bottleneck is now no longer the setting. It's now the closing or the leads or the fulfillment, one of those three. Usually it's leads. So whatever the new bottleneck is, we focus on solving that. And then we move on to solve the next bottleneck that's in front of us because there's always going to be a new bottleneck, but we're going to be growing as we do it. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. But yeah, these are the main principles when it comes to hiring and retaining a setter that's going to actually be successful on your offer. So yeah, make sure to not fall into that trap of thinking that a setter alone is going to be the person that scales your business because they're not responsible for scaling your business. It's your business, right? They're going to help you book more calls and they're going to book qualified calls if they're doing their job. And then it's on you to make sure that you're increasing the inputs to give them even more opportunity to convert. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And I'll see you guys in the next video.